Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is midday on the West Coast, mid-afternoon on the East Coast, early evening over in Europe. We always have that one guy from Ireland on. Welcome. And then in Australia, it's early morning. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for the weekly webinar at SMB Nation. This is always a fun one. We do the quarterly analyst report. This time we're actually doing the Q1 is actually a couple days into Q2. There's some reasons for that. Part of it is some of the materials we're preparing weren't ready at the end of last month and so on. So here we go with the Q1 MSP Analyst Report. For those of you that are new to SMB Nation, 17 plus years in business. So thank you for supporting the community. We've been active in the community over the years with various awards and designations. I realize most of you are familiar with SMB Nation, but we do have some new attendees today. And then finally, we have participated in the media community, both as a publisher and then being covered by major magazines. With that said, let's jump right into it. So introductions, Harry Brailsford. I am the founder of SMB Nation. We have Jenny Hallmark over in the radio control room today, followed by Tim Carlson. Tim, how about a hello?
How do I sound now?
There you go. You're sounding great. Thank you,
Thanks.
Tim.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Carl Palachek, let's get a hello from you, sir.
Hello, indeed. Thanks for having me.
All right. Dan Shapiro. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Harry. Thanks for including me on your panel.
You bet. And then John Ruman. John, hello.
Hey, Harry, and hey, good day, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and by the way, shout out to Ninja MSP. Folks, as you know, we strive to bring academic, independent content to the community that has a lot of value adds, and the way we're able to do that is with the support of our sponsors. And Ninja MSP has graciously agreed to view this more as a national public radio type endeavor where they have underwritten this hour, and we're going to hear from them briefly at midpoint. But totally appreciate your support. So we'll jump right into it. The agenda, it's the same agenda that you saw, folks, when you signed up for the webinar. So we're going to focus on analytics and marketing as a service, and we have some experts, and hopefully myself, certainly in Tim Carlson, Dan Shapiro, and Carl Palachek. Then we're going to talk briefly, I'm going to show you what the social selling index, and you're welcome to calculate your social selling index on screen number 2. And then we're going to talk about some polling results that we got in terms of what you want to hear in the community, and we're pleasantly surprised by the security opportunity. I'm going to make brief mention, I thought a Q1 concept was Teams. So Teams from Microsoft and 365 was in beta, and then it launched. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and how I'm using it. Then we have Where in the World is Carl Palachek, and we're going to talk about some events that he's doing and get some feedback on events, the type of people that attend events, the type of people that will pay to attend events, and so on. Brief look at a couple of different startups and M&A update, and then plenty of time for your questions as we go along. So let's jump right into it. So the 5 Ps of marketing. So I put a little fire starter up a couple weeks ago proclaiming that the 5 Ps of marketing are dead, and marketing has changed to what I affectionately call marketing 2.0, but marketing is now math. And that's a little spooky because a lot of marketing majors didn't sign up for that. In fact, that's why they chose marketing, was to not do math, and it has really pivoted. If you're not familiar with the 5 Ps, and I'm being a little facetious because, of course, we still have these elements of marketing, but we're talking about the product itself, the pricing, the promotion, the placement, also known as distribution, and then the people and the customers. And this is the traditional way that marketing was taught in the colleges and the MBA programs. And not that you're still not going to get a chapter on that, but marketing has really shifted more to analytics. And by that I mean, first of all, it's measurable. Marketers love the analytics because it's no longer a print ad with a very hard to measure call to action. It's no longer necessarily a bus ad. And again, it's hard to measure who saw it and how effective it was, but we can really measure things down to a really low level. And then testing. So the work I've done in this area was test, modify, test. It's almost maddening. And then finally targeting. So as a result of being able to measure and test, we can better target what we like to call lookalikes or nearest next door neighbors as we do custom audience building. And some of you will remember from the prior webinars that I have been involved, actually exited end of year, but 22-month stint inside a big data company that was owned by a marketing agency. And boy, howdy, that was like getting paid to get a grad degree. Carl, I have a question for you on this. I know you've been busy. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you had signed up, and then I know life happened, and I'm just wondering if you've gotten back to the, what do they call it, the Microsoft, they call it a degree in data science. What was that? Could you remind the audience what that program was?
Yeah, so Microsoft has a data analytics, and they do call it a degree to the chagrin of colleges everywhere. But I finished one course. I finished the introductory course, which is, it's a true statistics course with a hands-on introduction to running the tools in Azure and R programming and RStudio and all of that. Like you say, I just haven't started the second course, but it's a work at your own pace program, but it is all about the analytics. It's you mentioned that this is this big change, but this change has been coming gradually for 25 years. The more we can measure stuff, the more we're able to tweak our advertising. But nothing is perfect. Try to make Google Ads pay for itself, and it's like a major undertaking. And even though you have all the analytics, you still got to figure out, what the big picture is and all the fine details.
Yeah, it's at the IBM conference I was at in Q1, the IBM Partner World Conference, which is what the article image is about, and I encourage you to go to LinkedIn, go to my profile on LinkedIn, and you can read this article. IBM has gotten, I offer a head start in the game with Watson. They got in early, and the spoils go to the victor because, Carl, it is about machine learning, it is about testing, and in a sense, time is your friend, if that makes sense, right? If you got in 10 years ago with Watson, you kind of have a 10-year head start.
Well, and the more that we can try to learn from, Facebook, because you've seen it, you search for whatever, USB cables for your new phone with a different connection, and then you go on Facebook and boom, there's an ad for it. And you're like, how did they know that? And it's shocking. But Facebook measures absolutely everything, and so they're kind of the ultimate marketing tool today.
Yeah, it's certainly with targeting. Hey, Dan, for the audience that the people that don't know you, so you're the founder of ClickCloud, a digital marketing firm and service. You were an executive at Ingram Micro in the marketing area and a co-founder, I believe, of Kaseya. So you've been around the block. You want to kind of weigh in on marketing 2.0. What's been your experience with the pivot to analytics?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing this topic to the table, because if you're not measuring it, it doesn't exist. So analytics and marketing is just like one of those things. Just don't leave home without it. And to Carl's point, trying to squeeze every little bit of value out of your marketing dollar. For example, looking at running AdWords campaigns, right? If you go into the campaign with maybe an expectation, what how many leads do I need to generate in order to make my growth targets for the month or for the quarter based on how many leads convert into a real opportunity or even closed business going into it. You kind of have a sense for what I really should be spending. Then it's back to what you're saying: testing, measuring, targeting, going back and seeing, can I really spend the money in this way to generate enough interest or enthusiasm. Now, some of the activity might be more top of the funnel, and it might be harder to actually quantify the results. So maybe you're doing some awareness campaigns, like for example, using Facebook just to build your brand. And people think of Facebook in a lot of cases as just for personal use, but you can really use that platform for targeting your demographic. It could be, trying to find business owners. Well, business owners might be highly educated, and they might sway one way from one gender to another. And with the right level of targeting, you could get your brand in front of them. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're using the data to do the targeting. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the immediate return like you might if you're running an AdWords campaign where you're doing price quotes or something to that effect. So the analytic piece is absolutely critical to the equation, and you just have to measure everything, know what you're going to expect to get out of it on the back end, whether it's hundreds or thousands of dollars or whether it's millions of dollars of marketing budget. Go into it with an expectation, and then you'll feel better about it. At worst case, you'll learn something, right?
Yep, well, and that's a good.
One other note,
go ahead.
Dan,
go ahead.
You still have to have kind of that guerrilla sense, right? Like, I can't compete with the really, really big names in the managed service business that are willing to pay $40 a click for Harry's name, right? But I can put ads on games, knowing that there's a huge overlap between gamers and the people who buy my products. And so that ad costs me 4 cents versus $40 for a click on the term managed services.
Yeah, and you know what? Hold that thought, Carl, because we'll get to that about ad networks on the next slide versus buying individual ads on web pages. We have a great slide coming up. Tim, quickly, I want you to weigh in on this page. Tim recently exited a startup in downtown Seattle in the social analytics area, and then also brings a varied background in venture capital and so on. So he's kind of on 3 or 4 sides of the equation. Tim, what I want to pose to you is, why do we rob banks? And that's because that's where the money is.
Yes, indeed.
And the context is the money has shifted from IT to marketing, and that's what our audience is, MSPs, and they have really got to go across the aisles. But I wanted you to weigh in on the bank robber theory, analytics, and marketing, my friend.
So, and are you going to another slide, or are we still working on this slide?
Yeah, we're still on this slide. Do you want me to? Actually, we have a poll.
No, that's fine.
Slide okay.
The point I wanted to make, based on my most recent lap around the sun, was that we were working with a highly advanced group of data scientists at the outer edges of predictive media ad sell in advance of a mushrooming story. So imagine all those moving parts, talking about math, to Carl's point. And we were working with all the names that you might imagine at the high end. So the Digitoses and the Edelmans and the Mind Matrixes and the Sachis and the Grays and all of those giant New York-based, globally influencing marketing and advertising agencies, because what they were looking for was anything that could create an edge, which could AKK pencil down to a return. So this is 3 years ago, so that's not very far back considering, and every one of them was in the process of assembling what they called their black box. And in the black box would be the assortment of tools that they intended to assemble on behalf of the customer, and all of us small, very focused, targeted tool vendors were hoping to get in those black boxes, and oh, by the way, they weren't going to allow us to see the customer directly in any way because they still wanted to be pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So it is, and the reason that they all were forced to this is because the ad revenue has changed, and when your return rates are where they are for advertising in the modern world, you know, it was recognized by all of the senior managers that we talked to at these giant ad facilities that sooner or later somebody in Treasury was going to say, hey, do you think we could get a little better return on this investment? The joke was, or I'm just going to buy a NASCAR. And so, you know, in the end, this shift to digital is just beginning, and you're going to have a roadmap because you can't just hang with Facebook page anymore. It's beyond that now.
Yep. Let's move on. So this next slide, I'm going to look to Tim and Dan to primarily drive. Oh, yeah, Jenny. Yeah, we have a poll. Yep, sorry, Jenny. Go ahead. Yep. Let's do the poll.
And the poll is, do you know what marketing as a service is? Yes, no, or maybe?
And Jenny, while you're doing that, if two things, Jenny, I'll need you to read the results as I have the live screen, if you don't mind. And then also, folks, you have joined the Q1 MSP Analyst briefing, and this time we're focusing primarily on marketing and analytics. And trust me, there's a play for MSPs. We understand that our audience is channel partners and so on, and the play is several-fold. You can use it yourself to increase your business. You can make this part of your conversation with your customers and beyond. Jenny, how are we doing on that poll?
We're going to close it and share it here. So we've got those results up. It looks like 36% say yes, 36% say no, and 29% say maybe.
Okay. There we go. I'm just writing it down. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. I knew time in this case would not be our friend today. We're about 20 minutes in. We got to keep moving. So on this slide, this is how I would like people, for the purposes of today, to think of marketing as a service. And I'm going to look to Tim and Dan to maybe lead the conversation here. So Tim, you're the one that found this art and suggested it. If you want to kind of walk us through it from marketer to consumer and all the various tools, and then we'll have Dan pitch in.
If it was possible for you to zoom in to this slide, what it was designed to do, and this was basically my world for 2 years, each one of those bubbles, and we can send anybody who wants a copy of this slide so you can drill down into each one.
Yeah, we will.
It basically represents a subset of a service provider. So for instance, say a Hootsuite or a Marketo, there's certain specific companies that do ad serve. And so social media tool vendors, this is an explosion, and this is venture capital backed. And so in order to make sense of what you might want to try and do for your business or for your client's business, which is the other way to think about this, was to try and make sense of all these tools. So if you remember a minute ago here, I referenced black box. So this is what everybody was trying to sort out. I'll take one of those, 2 of those, 4 of those, and I'm going to have this incredibly efficient black box. Well, it turns out that that's true, but this slide is from 2016, and the good folks at Luma have told me they've got a new one coming out for 17, and there's another 50 companies. So how do you make sense and how do you manage this? And oh, by the way, there's too many of them. And so sooner or later, everybody wants $500 to $1,500 a month to use just what they uniquely provide in the global economic space that is social media. And so, boy, if you bought all 15 tools that you might need, but you can't confirm just yet anyway, which is working and which isn't, you're spending a fortune before you even go ahead and employ the social media marketing skill set, which is also new and hard to find. So yeah, this is where we are right now, and this is one of the things that this is why it's so hard, because the signal to noise ratio is very high, And many of these places, if you went to check their websites, you would see that a lot of what they say is so similar that you're lucky to get any lines around them at all. So
yeah.
I know at one point I was working with almost a third of these companies, and I would go home with a headache most nights. So,
you know,
Dan, go ahead.
It's interesting. I mean, to be a marketer in today's world, you have to pretty much run almost like your own IT department, because there is so much technology that goes into it. Now, look at the team I had at Ingram, for example. You know, how much time we spent in keeping sites up to date, or just the content management aspect of it, or all the little social media components and bolt-ons, or the email marketing components that you could bolt on, or the automation systems, or the integration back with your Salesforce automation, so on and so forth. It could make your head spin. So, what I would say when you're looking at it like this, if it is making your head spin, don't go it alone. And that's where there's companies that are popping up, or services that are being added on, hence the topic today, marketing as a service. I know, Harry, you've got all kinds of tricks up your sleeve where you're aggregating the services, and we do the same thing at ClickCloud to take the hassle out of it, exactly, so that you don't have to, as a practitioner, you've got, if you're a small business owner, you need to stick to your knitting and service your clients, and to try to learn all these tools and technologies yourself, it's not adding value to your business. So, trust an expert, somebody who can pick up some of these pieces or all of these pieces for you, and kind of insulate you from the hassle factor that goes along with trying to stay abreast of which one's the best, which one works well, which ones are compatible, and which ones are cost effective, and really getting the job done. So it's a lot. I'm sure you've got some thoughts on it too, Harry.
Well, I thank you. I do. And what I would add, two things, is that there are a number of services out there, and God bless them. And I guess I would view it this way, Dan, that it's kind of like maybe the way you might hire a law firm. So are there a lot of law firms? Yes, there are. Probably too many. But each law firm has its own little niche, right? This law firm does especially well in this area, boutique law firm, the other law firm does well in another area. And that's what I'm seeing in the agency world, is they all kind of have a niche. And so I'm aware of one provider in our space that is at least in my mind's eye, at the top in terms of graphics, in terms of the creative graphics and design. Tim and I guess we kind of pride ourselves on maybe a little bit more of the math is our friend, and then also simplicity. Dan, you have you have your own strengths. Does that make sense? That there's all these agencies out there, and it's kind of like it just depends on what your needs are. And then I would also tell you that this is where I kind of give the speech that I'll never work for a company again run by engineers. And the problem with that statement is most of our audience in this webinar are companies run by engineers, right? MSPs that started out as system admins, engineers, technicians, and so on. And what I mean by that statement, and Dan, it kind of dovetails to what you're saying, is that we probably need to let the engineers do what they do best, but let's not confuse them as marketers. And that's something they can outsource, right?
Yeah, and that the law firm's a good example, and I would even say, look at it, just take your, for the audience out there, as either a systems integrator, managed service provider, what have you, is we all have our own specialties in the services that we deliver, and where we find the gaps, we typically tend to partner. So if you're really good at the IT outsourcing piece, but maybe you got a relationship with a telecom agent who handles all of your multi-location networking, because that's what they really do, and they don't really want to deliver IT services, and you don't really want to deliver or work with the carriers on that regard, you partner in that particular case. And we see a lot of that in our client base at ClickCloud. And it's the same thing. I mean, we have relationships with all kinds of organizations, that, whether it's training or people who do the call down and the telemarketing, or others that do various types of outbound campaigning. We stick to what we do really well, which is kind of managing the website, the blogging, and the newsletter service. You know, it's just like the piece we really do well. We can do other things, but you know, when necessary, we partner. So it's just, you know, getting that level of comfort with your various suppliers, but trying to go it alone and replicate this. It's like trying to, you know, start your own nuclear power plant just to plug in your electric shaver. There's no point in doing that, right? when others are there to help.
There you go. Hey, Jenny, I think we have another poll for this slide, and then we'll move on.
We sure do. Do you currently use a mass or marketing automation tool? Yes or no?
And folks, that could be a service or a tool, just to help you out here. So it could be HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, some of the tools that are relatively well known, or it could be a service. We're just kind of curious as to how you're making this happen today. And again, if you joined us late, this is the Q1 MSP Analyst webinar. We're going to be moving on shortly to some other topics.
And Harry,
okay,
just a reminder also, we've had a couple questions. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sure to send it out in an email in the next 48 hours for that replay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the deck.
And share that.
Okay, Jenny.
It looks like 71% of the audience says no, and 29% of that audience says yes.
Yeah, and quickly, what I would do, thank you, Jenny. The value I can add here is, you saw my article a couple slides back on IBM Partner World, which is basically a Watson love fest. And they said something in the 3-day conference that really I really enjoyed the conference. And something that stood out was we're just 1% of the way there. And so, you know, some of the old, Carl, I'm not talking 5 1/4-inch floppy disk. What was the predecessor? Was it an 8-inch floppy disk?
Yes. Well, you know, I have a 1.5-foot hard disk in my office here from a digital equipment piece of Digital Equipment Corporation equipment. So
there you go. That's where we're at. Okay, moving on, folks. Social Selling Index. I'll cover off on this slide. So this is a door opener for the MSPs. This is important. First of all, calculate your own on screen 2. Use that URL, LinkedIn/sales/SSI, and it's a measure of your LinkedIn behavior, your activity. LinkedIn, of course, is a business development professional's dream. So I came in at 78. A colleague I work with is 86. We have a fun little competition going on in terms of gamification and so on. But what you can do is go to your clients and start to introduce a business conversation past the IT department, past the server room, and say, hey, why don't we sit down and run this and see where you land, and then you have a baseline in terms of where you can go from here, and it is dynamic. And again, I would encourage you to not only run it, but run it occasionally, because if you take a little bit of time off LinkedIn, it goes down. So it is a dynamic score based on your behavior. A little shout out to that tool as a door opener. And we now have a ninja moment with John. So John, we appreciate your underwriting of our endeavors to deliver real content. For those in the audience that don't know Ninja MSP, sir, who are you, where are you, and what are you doing?
Yep. So thank you very much for having us on the call today. We do appreciate it. And hello, everybody. My name is John Riemann. I'm the Vice President at Ninja. We are the next-gen RMM SaaS cloud platform out in the marketplace. We have been around for a couple of years now. We are the former members, if people know, the Packet-Trap company. A lot of us came back to decided to make a little splash back in the RMM space. So the Ninja platform is built from MSPs for the MSPs, where we deliver a single pane of glass for all your integration needs. What Ninja's philosophy is that we're going to be the app store for all these integrations. So we want the MSPs to pick and choose the products that they would like to see and use. And basically, it's pay for what you have, and that's it. We offer no contracts, no onboarding fees. It's basically pick out what you want, tell us how many devices, and away you go. It's a simple, easy interface, and you're up and running within minutes. And that's really about it. We're located in San Francisco, California. That's where our headquarters is. Our development is in Boca Raton, Florida. I reside in Florida as well. And Ninja has expanded this year out in outside of North America in UK and Ireland with our distribution partners in the Netherlands, South Africa, and also in APAC. We feel the MSPs and the corporate IT departments need a fresh interface and refreshing product out there, and that's what Ninja is. And basically, it's built for the MSPs, again, for the MSPs, and take direction from the MSPs of what they want to see in the product. So if you'd like to take a look at us, please visit our website. And again, thank you everybody for joining on the call today, and thank you Harry and Jennifer as well. And I'll pass that back to you, Harry.
Sure, John. Hey, John, be sure to get us any, if you have, say, a one-pager or some links. I'm going to send out the thank you notice myself. So shoot me over what you would like to share with the audience. And I'll end on this, that it looks like math is your friend, sir. You guys are not afraid of the quantitative, the quantitative side. I'm just looking at your dashboard.
Yep. Yeah, we try to make it easy for the MSPs to see everything right there, so they don't have to go search for it.
There we go.
It makes their life a lot easier.
Moved on. Security.
Tim, Harry, it looks like we have a
Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. Yep, Jenny. Thank you.
Do you currently use an RMM tool? Yes, no, or I don't know.
Let people take a look at that. Folks, we're at midpoint in the Q1 MSP webinar, and appreciate your attendance. We're going to shift directions now to some of the more traditional topics that are near and dear to the MSP's hearts. Okay, Jenny.
Here we go. It looks like 74% of the audience said yes, they currently use an RMM tool. And 26% of the audience said no, they don't currently use an RMM tool.
Okay. Moving on, we're going to talk about a poll we did. So we eat our own dog food and live and breathe and use these tools extensively. This would be SurveyMonkey, which is amazing, especially if you pay more for more of their services. And so we ran a poll. And Carl, I'll start with you. We ran a poll on what people want to hear. And we thought, wow, why don't we ask the customer on what they would like to hear in a one-day workshop or an online workshop format? So we're listening and we're spot on. The results came back. The three things I want to highlight was, while we are fond of analytics at the bottom, that actually scored poorly. So that either means it's a green field or there's not a lot of interest in it. And Carl, maybe one of those things, they just want to hire somebody to do it, right? They don't really need to master it.
Or they don't see the value, like they don't understand what it does for them.
Good, very good. And then the top category was Office 365. I call it General Advanced Gizmos. Carl, we're a little hesitant to go to market with a tour. Again, online, in person, whatever, but we're hesitant to go to market with Office 365 right here, right now, because we've done it for 3 years, and it feels a little bit long a tooth, even though the polling, this is where we kind of defy the polling numbers, but at least we know. The one we're excited about, Carl, is security. Came in number 2, and we got our hacking, our wiretapping, our this or that. Security never goes away. So I just kind of wanted to get, you're out on the road and your slide's coming up about the tour you're doing, so we'll get to that. But dude, you're out there. How many cities have you done so far this year? I think 6. You've done 6
I've done 7 so far. Okay. 7 so far, so I got another 20 to go.
Well, what's the word on the street? I mean, clearly security scored high. Would you concur with these poll results, or are we missing something?
Well, I think that you have a somewhat Microsoft-centric audience, so Azure is higher than it might be for a lot of technicians who didn't grow up with Microsoft. But Office 365 and Azure are just the hottest topics out there. The funny thing about security is it's not that it's a specific separate topic. It is the base that everything has to meet, right? If it's not secure, then we're just moving on to the next thing. Like, no one will talk about anything without first asking the question, is it secure? Is it HTTPS? Is it encrypted, right? You can't talk about an RMM agent. You can't talk about email. You can't talk about anything without first addressing the security question. So I don't know that it's a separate topic. It's that hot, but it is the first thing you have to address in every other topic you discuss.
Yeah, and it's not going away. Hey, Tim Carlson, quickly, forgive me, I'm mindful of time, so we get through the slides and have time for questions. But you have been surveying our sponsors, and they have you've tapped into some excitement on the security conversation. Why don't you share at a high level what you've been hearing as you've been making the rounds?
Okay, so, and being mindful of time, I'm going to talk quickly. I agree completely with Carl. If it's not secure, there's no point in discussing it. And what you'll notice is that a lot of providers of, say, documents or archives or cloud-based storage or whatever you want to think about, I'm trying not to name the names of the companies, what they're typically telling users is that we're uber secure because AWS or Azure see to it that that's the case. So as you move to the cloud, the great assumption that you have to make is that they're working very, very hard on making sure that encryption where it can happen at the server level is ongoing. What we're also learning, however, is that there's simply no way that you can claim absolute security at the server level. There's just too many places where the internet does what the internet does. So what I've noticed is that a lot of people are actually talking about actual document encryptions where necessary. Not every document's important. Not everything matters, but boy, if you could go ahead and make sure that the HR records or the sales funnel or the new marketing program or the board minutes before they're released are encrypted in such a way that if someone did get a hold of them, couldn't open them. Yeah, especially if you're a SharePoint user. So I just think that we're going to keep playing this spy versus spy game. To Harry's point at the very beginning, it's in the news every day how someone's listening. Someone told me the other day that no one should ever have one of those Amazon Echoes because they're actually spying. It's like, real, come on. Right, but the net of it is there are step function security tools that I'm talking to people about all the time, and this poll was consistent with what I suspected. People are a little bit worried about their privacy, a little bit worried about security, and the revoke of that recent piece of legislation that was going to change the rules a little bit on who had control. That targeted ad thing isn't going away. It's coming back, and it's coming back harder. So, yeah, if anybody wants to know a little bit more about that, I would be really glad to sit down and tell you what I'm hearing and who I'm talking to and where there is an opportunity to increase value for your customers, which is the bottom line.
There you go.
If we can help you, help them.
Yep, and you're right about the executive. I believe it was an executive order. It may have been a congressional vote, but it overturned some protections in terms of your browsing history, and that just happened. I'm going to call that a Q. Yeah. So okay, good, because it was a Q1 concept.
Yep.
All right.
New York Times went into details to what it means. If anybody wants to Google it, they did the fairest review of it. I thought So if that helps in any way.
There we go. Office 365 Teams is a Q1 concept, folks. Here's the deal. I use both. I use Slack and I use Teams. I personally like Slack better. Now that may be because I'm more familiar with it, and you don't have to be, Carl, I'm going to say it incorrectly. It's not really a domain member. To use Teams, you have to, I believe, have an Office 365 subscription, but it's not really the domain concept.
Right.
Versus Slack, anybody can be joined to the team on Slack for free. So that is sort of my number one beef. However, it's here. Teams was in beta. It launched in March. It's here. You need to wrap your arms around Teams. It's the Slack competitor. It's another arrow in your quiver to go to customers with and implement it. And what I want to do is I can hint, but Jameson West, who's been featured on this show before, superstar MSP who has a lot of merger and acquisition experience and has grown, a big HTG peer group member. He will have an announcement about a startup surrounding Teams in Q2. The first part of Q2, he's going to have an announcement, so we'll cover that at SMB Nation and kick that out in the Sunday paper. But he's building a business around this, and that's pretty cool. So, Carl, have you played with Teams? Dan, Carl, you guys played with Teams at all?
I have not. I poked around, but I haven't really spent any time with it.
Yeah, Dan, are you a Slack man? Are you a Slacker or a teamer?
Yeah, I've used a variety of collaboration tools. Basecamp and Slack are the ones that probably most extensively have been up to my elbows with Teams. But using that technology for collaboration it's a great way to get projects done. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, exactly. Where in the world is Carl Palachuk? Carl, I love that photo.
Hey, you know what? That cost me $5 on Fiverr. So there you go.
There we go.
Gary, before we get
Carl,
started with Carl, we've got a poll to launch.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jenny.
Yep. Are events too expensive to attend relative to the value you receive? Yes, no, I'm not sure.
So we'll let people take a look at that. Folks, the intention of this poll question is the MSP partner audience. It would be a very different question to ask the vendor community, the sponsor community. So we have both on this, but if you could be thinking of the answer in terms of an attendee at an event, that was our intention with the question. So Jenny, what's news?
So 48% of our audience said yes, 19% said no, and 33% said I'm not sure.
Okay, let me write that down. Carl, we'll get to that because I want to talk to you about that since you're arguably doing the most events in the industry right now, my friend. And with that segue, you've done 7 so far. You're hitting 7 continents. You have one in Antarctica. I mean, dude.
not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting for.
Well, what are you doing? This is your. Give it your best shot. What are you doing, and where are you doing it?
All right. So over at smbroadshow.com, I'm putting on a roadshow, and it's on how to design cloud bundles, and price them and sell them, and keep tweaking them over time so that you can continue to increase your revenue. And so we're hitting 28 cities in 6 countries this year. So coming up at the end of this month is Southern California, and then next month I'm doing New York City and Philadelphia. Both of those are pretty well attended. So anyway, I would love folks to join us, and we have had super feedback. And so far, in every city, somebody has flown in from another state to attend the event so they could get the information before their competition. And it really is a new business model for designing a cloud-based offering going forward in the very small business space.
Yeah, and a couple of questions, and we'll get to the poll results because I want to talk about how you hit that head on. But so first of all, when are you going to Australia? Because I want to mark that down.
Australia is October, so I'm doing 4 cities in Australia, and then I'm going to hang out for a week and then speak at the SMB IT Professionals Conference in Brisbane.
Okay, perfect. So, well, Tim, Jenny, make a note. That's a stretch goal, but I think we can earn it.
Hey, and join me there, Harry. I'll let you in for free.
There you go. But that gets us to the point.
Harry can't go, but Tim and Jenny can.
There you go. Well, we've had Carl. We've had extensive conversations, and Dan, I'm happy to kind of have you pitch in about the value of events. Again, let's view it from an MSP partner point of view, and we've had our challenges like any promoter in terms of competing with traffic. Dan, down in Southern Cal, where you are in Irvine, that's one of our biggest competitors when we do an event is traffic. And we have sliced and diced and modeled that. Do we do it on a Saturday? Do we do it at night? Do we start at 10 a.m.? We compete against time, like how do you get people to leave their offices? And then we compete, quite frankly, against Microsoft. Microsoft has a large event portfolio. That's their right to do that. And so we're competing against them because, Carl, these guys can't go to events all month long. They actually have to work.
Right.
And Carl, you're charging, if you don't mind sharing what you charge your attendees, and dude, how are you pulling it off, man? Because I think the industry needs that. I think we need to make events profitable for all involved.
Yeah. Well, part of the question of whether things are too expensive, if I go to channel partners in Las Vegas, this week, I have to fly there, get a hotel, eat hotel food, whatever. I mean, it's really hard to do that under $1,000. So I'm going to have to find value in doing that. If something is local and it's free, well, that's a different story. I don't need to find much value to make it worth my while, except taking time off from my customers. So in terms of how I provide value, it's literally a business model. Like the way I look at it is, if you register more than a month out, it's $600, and if you register closer in, it's $800. But you need exactly one client ever for the rest of your life to pay for that, right? And it is a business model. So putting together a bundle that the way I sell it is about 72% profit, and so it's a different way of looking at the world. It's sort of like what you did, 20 years ago, wandering around and showing people, here's a business model that involves putting a server in somebody's site, and people were like, why would I put a server on a customer's site?
Yeah.
But you showed them how to make money doing it. So this is a similar thing.
Yeah, and Dan, you've been involved with doing events at Kaseya and Ingram. How do you get people to pay? What's your thought on this?
Yeah, so I was going to say I can put on a couple different hats on that one, whether it's the Kaseya and Ingram experience, launching Kaseya Connect for the first time, and then being responsible for Ingram's Global Cloud Summits, whether it was in Europe or here in the U.S., and at the same time, role on the board at CompTIA, where we have our annual members meeting and a channel con, not to mention the role on faculty, where I get to go out and go to all the other events. So I have a lot of different hats when it comes to the events. So when you're hosting an event, you're trying to create maximum value. Part of it, when we look at it like a cloud summit or from a Kaseya Connect standpoint, we're looking at the location and the draw. That Las Vegas, to Carl's point, maybe it's a little bit of a haul, but for a lot of people, it's maybe an easy or inexpensive flight, and depending on the time of the year. Maybe the hotel accommodations aren't that expensive. If we can get vendors who want access to our attendees, then they could help maybe sponsor the event, which covers some of the cost. So it's maybe a little bit more affordable when it comes to event fees. If we can get enough people in there, then that drops down the room rate. So that that's one thought on it. Other things, to try to set up the kind of networking and hospitality. I mean, it's one of the part of the feedback we get is in addition to learning, getting education, if it's like a user conference where you're actually getting product-specific training or business transformation training, and other important aspect is the networking. And so if you are going to go to an event, bring it. And that, what I mean by that is plan in advance. Who do you want to meet with? Make your priorities and make sure you connect with the right people. It could be very convenient, and in some ways it could save you in the long run if you look at it the right way by coming to the event, knowing that the people that you really need to be in contact with are going to be there face-to-face. That face time could help you put together those partnerships, or just get that meeting out of the way that you've been meaning to do, and doing it in a more meaningful fashion because it is face-to-face. So it could be an economic way of just cramming a lot in. Now, you mentioned, I heard you mention it as, do you do them on the weekends or midweek? There's different schools of thought on that. Having a weekend element to it can help people so that they work during the middle of the week or during the week with their client workload, or having it adjacent. If it's a great location, then some people look at it like extended holiday. They might golf, what have you. In the middle of the week, at the same time, that makes it so you're not eating into family time. For some people, they don't like to travel on the weekends to get to an event. So having like a channel partners next week with like a Tuesday through Thursday kind of a run makes it a little easier for some people to get to. So there's a lot of planning that goes into events, and if they are convenient for you to attend and you can make the most out of them, it'd be great if you can just keep the industry going by attending those events and paying the nominal subsidized fees you can to come out to hear people talk that you otherwise wouldn't get to see face to face.
Yeah, and I'll end on with the events that there's a lot of them to choose from. So, be mindful of it. It's almost like every event has their own little twist to it. So, for example, Channel Partners next week, I still view it as core is a sales agent conference in telephony. Now, I know they've done outreach to the MSP community and so on, but when I've gone to it in recent times, it still has a lot of telecom roots, which is fine if that's the conversation you want to have. Moving on, top startups, earnings, merger and acquisition updates. Not a big part of our update this time. We kind of rode this horse hard in 2016 with our quarterly updates. I want to highlight a couple of things. This is a Q1 concept, so my son and I conspired about how can he have fun this summer. Rule number one, what can he do for fun? He's an 18-year-old. He's headed to Cal Poly to join his brother in a technical career path. And, Mama Bear was having a conversation about, well, let's do food service or go to Safeway and talk about bagging groceries. And we thought about it a little bit more, so we went ahead and secured the domain name willworkforstockoptions.com, and he is having conversations in Seattle with startups about working for free for the summer. And boy, howdy, guys, you just never know. You just never know. He may be driving a Tesla by his senior year of college. More importantly, it's a foot in the door. The way we framed it up, you're welcome to go to my webpage and read the article. By the way, if you want help with this concept, that's how we're expanding the concept. Hit me offline if you have a kid that would work for stock options for free. We're going to launch a webpage next week with a form you can fill out, and we're happy to play matchmaker to the extent we have time, but there may be some there. But, the old proverbial foot in the door, literally doing dishes, acting as a courier, making gentlemen, this makes for good stories later in your career, let me tell you. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes. Tim, why don't you pop in on some articles that have been flying across over at GeekWire in terms of marketing and the sector and some things you found a flyby startup just this morning that you brought to my attention.
Yeah, okay. So what I noticed again, and this goes all the way back to a conversation we had a little bit earlier in this call, there are a plethora, platforms aplenty is probably the article we should write, Harry, talking about people who are doing exactly what those giant advertising agencies were attempting to do 3 years ago, which is, grab the 6 tools that they think will work for them, throw them in a dashboard, and there you go. And that to me is symptomatic. These are now venture-backed startups coming to the marketplace with platforms where you still have to do the work. So, got it. The number one problem we had at the advanced technology company I was working at was getting the right millennial skill set to run that platform. So you've got 2 problems: which platform, which tools to use, and then where do I find something that's not as expensive as a data scientist, but somebody that can do a little bit more than cruise Facebook pages. And so there's 2 challenges buried in here, and this is all going to play out right in front of all of us. As far as I can tell, there's 25 different people that will hand you a platform that you can handle yourself, supposedly. So we shall see. In addition to that, looking at the clock, do you want the 2 minutes on M&A right now as well?
Yeah, I do, and then we're going to go to questions right after this next.
Got it. Okay.
Rock and roll, Tim.
So we do have we had a lot of inquiries and a lot of activity last year as it related to thinking about the next phase of life or the next place for the business, and currently we noticed that seems to continue to be top of mind for people. If that's something you want to talk about, there's a good, growing, all-inclusive entity on the East Coast who believes that this is the right time to add footprint to his service base. There's someone in Arizona that would like to do that, someone in Wisconsin that would like to do that. And I didn't even tell you about this one because it came in yesterday, Harry, but there's also someone on the east side of Seattle who's thinking along those terms. So if that's something you want to explore, we found the right people to have a conversation with, and then we stop. We match make, and then we run right over to the sidelines and cheer. So if we can help you do that or accomplish that, that's part of the mission. So that's all I have.
Okay, yeah, and I would just say, guys, we're in a mature market at some level, so you are seeing consolidation. So let's jump into Community Corner with your questions. While you're formulating your questions, which Ginny will read, and please do ask questions, I will be at the Ingram Cloud Summit in 2 weeks, and I will be at the Lenovo Accelerate Conference in 3 weeks. Carl, when is your absolute next city? What date and place coming up this month?
So at the end of this month in Los Angeles, April 25th, and San Diego is April 27th.
Okay, and we always have fun sounding like the Tonight Show where people talk about where they're going to be playing. But Ginny, did we have some questions roll in? We're almost at time.
We have a couple questions, and we also have another poll. Which would you like first?
Let's do the poll, and then we'll go right into overtime for a couple minutes on questions. Thank you, Ginny.
Perfect. We just launched the poll. Would you like a deep dive marketing as a service webinar for a small format, say 10 attendees? Yes or no?
Okay, and while they're answering that, Carl, what I'll do is give you yet another shout out that what I like about your workshop tours, it's a small format. What's your predicted average attendance? Is it like an executive MBA Saturday? You have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. It's a small format.
Yeah, I mean, we've been getting about 8 to 10 in a city, and actually one of the things people have given me feedback on is they really like meeting other people there, and the standard thing of the networking is always one of the most important components, talking to what other people are doing in their business.
Perfect. Hey, Jenny, let's jump into those questions.
Great. Carl, we got some feedback that lots of people love your graphic.
Oh, thank you.
Comment, I use both Teams and Slack, and they say Teams is better, Harry.
Yeah, it's an ongoing debate. I mean, the nice thing about Teams, in my opinion, would be that it has subcategories. Jenny, you and I were just talking, was that this morning? We were talking about if we could have more, in effect, subcategories because Slack kind of operates at a linear level, or at least how I use it. So you have the subcategories in Teams, but again, you have what I would call I'm going to call it the domain concept. It's not quite right, but there's golly gosh darn, there's a lot of people using Google Apps and Docs out there. and I have to interact with them. So that's my take today. Check out Jeff Shuey's blog, IAMCP, Jeff Shuey, SHUEY. He did a really good piece on a bake-off between the two. Jeff Shuey at IAMCP has a blog out. Jenny?
When you talk about marketing, it seems as though we lead towards as a common package marketing. From my experience, we get most of our business from community engagement versus marketing.
Yeah, we'll go to Dan on that one. Dan, you want to hit that one?
Absolutely. Well, community engagement is a form of marketing, so getting out there and networking. I like to say, when it comes to list building, build your list by handshake. Get out there and meet the people, but then it comes down to the follow-up. And if you can get it all done just by networking and you're happy with that, that's great. But if you want to squeeze a little bit more out of your time, and make more out of your effort, then you're going to do some sort of a follow-up with those people. And so we recommend with our clients is you take those names and contacts, you make sure you connect with them via LinkedIn, you make sure that you add those people to your monthly newsletter campaign, your drip campaign at a minimum. And that's not a lot of extra time or effort to just connect with somebody on LinkedIn and just add a name to a list. And over time, you're going to get maybe your 20% open rate, back to the original topic on metrics. And that means that 20% of the people, they're probably 1 in 5 in buy mode, are hearing your message, keeping you top of mind. So even though you might have met them at an event 6 months ago, when there's a need, they're thinking about you, and you're the ones that they call first. So it's just that, how to get a little bit more leverage out of the things that you're already doing.
Well, I would add, I never met a party I didn't like. I mean, if you think about it, well, I hope Mama Bear's not on the line, but, I think of the keggers I threw in high school, and I said to myself one day, I said, Self, I wonder if we could get paid to do this. And then I became an events company. And Dan, I have used trade association memberships, event attendance, hosting events, just feet on the street, one classroom at a time. Carl, you resemble that remark, to build my company. Not everybody agrees with that, by the way. There are different philosophies, but that's how I build SMB Nation. Carl, you get the final word. A follow-up to that question is, you recently published your open rate, which I found commendable. What was your open rate on your newsletter? It's a very handsome number.
My open rate is 21% on a weekly basis, and my click-through rate is 12%. So the thing that got me looking at that is to see whether or not people are clicking on all those links. I had over 75 links in my last newsletter, and every one of them got at least 2 clicks. So it's kind of that long tail approach to marketing, Somebody's going to buy every item on Amazon at least once a year, Somebody's going to click on at least one link no matter how many you have.
Yeah, well, I'll end with a broken clock tells the proper time twice a day. There's an analogy here somewhere there, but hey, folks, we're over time. Unfortunately, I have to cut it short. We will see you in Q2 with relevant updates that occurred during that quarter, fresh content. So thank you for joining us for Q1 Panelist. thank you very much, and you will be getting a thank you note from myself with the deck, the replay link, and some more information from Ninja MSP, who graciously underwrote this hour to make it possible. So John, thank you, and folks, have a great day. Back to the salt mine. Spring is here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.